If you've ever looked at how other people build businesses and thought, that just won't work for me, this episode's for you. Today, I speak with Paul Zelizer. Paul founded the Awarepreneurs podcast, which is the longest running social entrepreneur podcast in the world. Paul has also coached over 30,000 entrepreneurs to build businesses that significantly benefit people, profit, and the planet. In this conversation, we talk about why so many people feel out of step with conventional business advice, how to stop forcing yourself into models that weren't designed for you, and how you can build a business that works for that triple bottom line. Paul, thank you for being here. I've been really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Joe.
You've spent decades working with founders who want their business to mean something. If somebody listening remembers one thing from this conversation today, what would you hope that that is?
Well, you're a business owner if you're listening to Joe's podcast. And, we've learned a lot in the past several decades about how business can make a positive difference in the world. And my challenge, my suggestion to you as a business owner is why not?
I love that.
Making a difference into the world. Why wouldn't you, right? I always joke, if my boss isn't treating me very well, then I've got a problem, right? Because I own the business. Why wouldn't we lean into, our world is hurting, and why not find a small sliver of a way to make a difference and bake that into what you're doing? It's your business.
That is perfect. Was there a point before Awarepreneurs started, the longest running social entrepreneur podcast in the world, and your work directly with social entrepreneurs? Was there a point way back where you just thought, we can't do business the normal way, where things changed for you?
Yeah, I have a non-traditional path. I'm a non-traditional human, Joe. So my path is not typical into entrepreneurship. I started in community mental health. So I started with the values and the concerns about what was happening. I wasn't born in New Mexico, but I moved here in 1993. So I've lived here basically my whole adult life. And there were a lot of challenges. Originally, ones I sort of rolled my sleeve to get into were around substance abuse. And, outcomes for substance abuse treatment are not very good, even though we've spent billions and billions of dollars on it. Young men, engaging young men as fathers in particular. If you look at kids who grow up in families where they don't know their dads or don't have access to their dads, the outcomes are not great. So trying to make a difference there. And also trying to make a difference when our young people were starting to get involved with the police and law enforcement and winding up in jail. So that I started out as what we might call a social innovator. And along the way, realized that you have to fund the program. And I became the director of a nonprofit. And oh boy, that system is so broken, Joe. Trying to figure
Wow.
out how to fund. It wasn't for me, let's just say. And I continued to want to make a difference and to, help in some of these areas and other ones. And I realized that trying to fund it through government grants and nonprofit grants was not the path that was going to lead to a enjoyable career for myself. So there was a lot of burnout in that world. And so I started to look at how are people using business to make a positive difference. This was back in 2006, 2007. And the social entrepreneur circles were much smaller than they are now, but they were very mighty. And I got on Twitter in 2008 when nobody knew what it was in the corner of the world I lived in. And the social entrepreneur community was small, but incredibly mighty. And some very generous people started mentoring me.
It's a serious transition going from, community work to looking at the nonprofits system, realizing that doesn't work for what you want to achieve, and starting actual businesses. I've noticed just in marketing, particularly in the last since 2017, I noticed then that people would often nod yes, yes when they saw an ad that mentioned things like sustainability or community, but not buy. Like the conversion rate was quite low. I think I've seen a change since then, and I'm heartened by that. But you would have seen enormous changes from the time that you've been working in this. Can you
Coming up
speak to
on
that at
20
all?
years. Yeah, almost
Yeah.
20 years I've been doing this.
So as far as people sort of agreeing, or virtue signaling is probably a harsh way to put it, but people would like and share, for instance, a fundraising campaign without donating. I could see on the back end that they'd done that. And okay, if they feel they can't donate and they like and share, they're doing something. But it was an enormous proportion of people, which I feel is not authentic, or people would look at, there was an gym apparel line that I was marketing for once, and they were really big on the sustainability aspect of it, but that's not what was selling the clothes at
Yeah.
all. It was kind of a virtue signal, if you like. So have you seen a major shift with the work that you're doing in people actually taking action on these things, or the values sinking in where they actually want to put their money where their mouth is?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Joe. Back in the day when I was getting started, there was a lot of ways, there was a lot of conversation about how do we, what are the bullet points that are going to market the sustainable product or something that helps a underserved community.
Mm.
And one of my favorite episodes of late is I won't bore the listeners with all the details, but the title is very speaks to this very directly. The title of the episode is "To Sell Sustainability, Don't Talk About Sustainability."
Oh,
But the idea is we've learned how to be better entrepreneurs in the social entrepreneur space. Early on, 2007, 2009, 2012, it was very heavy on you should buy this. That's not
yes.
how people were talking about it, but that's fundamentally. And now we realize you have to build a really good product, be a really good business person is the best way to have positive impact. And we have examples of that at scale in ways that we didn't 20 years ago. We've just gotten better as entrepreneurs because we realize that if you really want to have impact, you have to build a great product and have a great impact story as part of that. And people who do both outsell, tons of research coming out of this. If you have both a great product, like best in class product, and you have something that is making the world a better place, it sells much better than people who have one or the other. It's a really good product, but it has no impact focus whatsoever. Or you have a really strong marketing budget for you should buy this, but it's actually not that great.
Well, if the product's good, that's sustainable on the micro level for the person
Yeah,
buying it too, for their
exactly.
resources they've laid out to buy it, for the product, as well as the broader impact in the community or the world. So I think that is fantastic. I think I will go and listen to that episode. Thank you for that. It's, did you have doubts early when you knew it mattered and you knew that it needed to be a business model, not a not for profit model? Were there any doubts that just were a little hard to shake in the early days?
I was terrified. I had no business training whatsoever. I had great mentors who like, you got this. And when you hit something, I mean, these are people who, built Silicon Valley, very well-known brands, including social media platforms that probably every listener here listens to. They were incredibly intelligent folks, and they saw my desire to help. I had no training. I don't have a business degree. I had never, again, I had handled money and grants to us. It was a small, innovative, we did good work nonprofit. And I was a clinician. I originally trained in addictions recovery and family, kind of innovative family systems. So I know humans, but I didn't know business. In the first 3 to 5 years, I had a lot of imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And as I kept doing the work and had great mentorship and then, just rolled up my sleeves, one of the things I was willing to do is to throw myself into things. I didn't suffer from analysis paralysis, largely because my mentors wouldn't let me. So when it was time to start a podcast, a mentor said, Paul, I had blogged for 10 years, for instance, got pretty good at it.
Yes.
Just because I'm stubborn and if I'm going to do it, I'm going to try to do it well. And I will lean in and try to provide value to smart people so that they'll share with me. And then when my mentor said, Paul, you need to start a podcast, I was like, Keith, I'm already blogging. I've been doing it 10 years. I finally figured this out. Why should I start podcasting? And he made his argument and he was right. And I started and, I just, again, threw myself in. And by that time I had built a decent network. I knew the human part of it. We're mentors and people who had built things at scale were willing to come on the podcast. I don't pay my guests, although certainly it serves as good marketing if it is an episode they like. So Yeah, I was terrified at the beginning is the short answer, Joe. And I just, the again, the impact and the desire to make a difference got me through some of those moments of feeling like I had a big steep learning curve. I didn't want to just get a job where I didn't feel that sense of making a difference. I have a higher need than most humans to feel like what I'm doing matters. At the end of my days, it's not about for me, like, yeah, I live a pretty good life now and I'm super grateful, but it's not how many cars I have, how big my house is, or how much money is in the bank. It's, did I live well while making a difference? That's how I judge what a good human life looks like.
I love that. And certainly it illustrates to me just that tension between, self-belief and the impact, knowing that you can make an impact, pulling you forward. I was listening to Jensen, who runs NVIDIA, and
Mm.
every day he still worries about the business falling apart every day. You know? So big business or small business, those human um, fears are the same. It's the same no matter what. So I think once we recognize that, as you say, you had a bent towards action. So just start the podcast. And then now you have the longest running social entrepreneurship podcast with Awarepreneurs. So, taking that action was the best thing you could have done instead of over analyzing it and thinking you'll
If I
start when you're
waited
ready.
another 5 years to feel like I was ready, I would
Yes.
still be, there's some credibility to just doing something for a while. And it's had a lot of benefits in other marketing platforms. Like, for instance, on LinkedIn, I have a very robust network on LinkedIn, which is one of the ways I can provide a lot of values to my clients and other people in the network because I am able to gain access to leaders in almost any space one of my clients might be needing some help with. I can go to leaders in this space that most people don't have access to because I've been building both the podcast and my LinkedIn profile for a very long time. And that means I can provide value. If I waited an extra 5 years, I wouldn't be where I am now. So there's
Mm.
definitely a bias towards entrepreneurs who get a certain sense of direction, but then launch lean as opposed to spending years and years of trying to figure it all out.
That's actually a sentence worth remembering, a certain sense of direction. It doesn't have to be a well mapped out sense of direction. If you were thinking about clients that you've worked with, are there any stories along that line that jump to mind where somebody just maybe didn't feel ready but did it anyway?
And launched. Yeah. I feel super grateful to be working. It's a native owned and indigenous owned and women owned construction company here in New Mexico. It's called
Mm.
Avanu. And we're getting ready to do a leadership retreat. They're 20 years in and 30 employees. They're working on an incredible project for them. If anybody knows the painter Georgia O'Keeffe, there's a museum in Santa Fe, New Mexico for the painter Georgia O'Keeffe. And they're doing a $75 million remodel. And my clients of Construction are working, they're not the only construction company, but it's a huge point of honor for them to be working on such an esteemed renovation and addition of this museum. It's a $75 million project. Well, when they started 20 years ago, there were, on mine, there were two hippies who needed a job, right? Liana
Mm-hmm.
Sanchez and Mateo. And they, they started this construction company, but they didn't really know that much about the industry. They were hungry, they were young, they wanted to work in a way that would respect what was needed in Native communities and provide good paying jobs and training and treat people well in an area in northern New Mexico where good paying jobs are not very common, particularly for people from Native communities and the small Hispanic communities of northern New Mexico. Now they have 30 employees and they're working on some of the most esteemed jobs in the state. And we've been able to help them scale, start a second business. Really cool things have happened, but just how they started was them looking at each other saying, let's do something about a problem, which is there aren't that many good paying jobs in communities for people that look like the founders of that company. And here they are doing something incredible 20 years later, but they started with a lot of faith, not a lot of money, and not a lot of um, examples of people running very successful businesses from the communities that they were from.
It's very inspiring. I'll find them and put a link to them in the show notes, because I think having a concrete example of business owners who have just built anyway is very useful to people. So we'll definitely link them. So the Awarepreneurs podcast focuses on the market tested strategies of world-class social entrepreneurs and clean tech founders. What's something that, through, I guess, interviewing these people and seeing their stories and coaching people, that you used to believe about business growth that you would now say is wrong?
It's a great question, Joe. I think I used to think it was a little more scientific than what hundreds of
Yes.
founders have said, along the lines of what we're talking about. So yeah, I used to feel like you could, analyze the market, and I am a big believer in market research, so I don't mean to minimize that. Um, but the way I disseminating all of that information from hundreds of people who built incredible impact companies at scale and clean tech companies. I'll describe how I work with clients now, if they're on the newer end of the
That would be
spectrum,
great.
to
Yes.
kind of give you a sense of, I used to think it was this super scientific thing. And there's a tool that is called the Lean Canvas. It's basically a one-page business plan. There's 11 buckets. And those buckets are very important. You're looking at your market analysis and who is your ideal client and what is your unique value proposition or sales proposition, what makes you different from who's already out there, right? But it's a one-page business plan, and then go and learn from the real world data of like do a certain amount of um, pre-research. Now, this is not necessarily if somebody needs a very large amount of startup capital to even get going. A construction company needs startup capital, but you don't need hundreds of millions, right? You need a pickup truck and a willingness to show up at, some places that'll help you get your first jobs. So it's not the ideal solution for everyone, but the large majority of my clients who are in pretty early stage, we start with that lean canvas, a one-page business map that you then, if anybody's read the book, The Lean Startup, which is the seminal kind of tech startup guide, the Lean Canvas is based on some of those frameworks. Get yourself enough data, point in the right direction, and then the best data, it comes from launching, right? Too many values-based, good entrepreneurs who want to make a difference and aren't only trying to make a lot of money. I'm good with people who want to make a lot of money, but if you are trying to make a difference as part of your business, too many wait and get into analysis paralysis, and then the work that you did 5 years ago is completely irrelevant now because
Yes.
AI and the market has changed. Like at a certain point, you just got to step in the water, and you'll
It's
learn
almost
from
5
being in the
weeks ago
water.
now. Yes. You do
Exactly,
have to step in.
exactly.
That's right. So I like earlier you were, talking about thinking that there was a scientific approach to business. And, lately I think a lot of us have been joking that we've realized there are no adults in the room. It is
Right?
just, you've got to just,
Yeah.
I guess, use your noggin, as we'd say here in Australia, use your brain, have a look at the landscape and what your skills are and what your resources are. And yes, as you say, market research is important, and you have to go, I guess, in depth and cover your bases if you're looking for capital. But I do think many people overcomplicate it big time. So I will definitely link to your tool as well and to the book in the show notes.
To
I
be
think
fair,
they're very useful.
I didn't create the lean canvas. I can't remember his name. I can picture his face. But again, we can get you the links. But I'm
Yeah.
a big proponent for businesses that are more established. There's something called a business canvas. So a lean canvas for newer businesses, business canvas if you've been up and running for 2 years or more and you have pretty substantial revenue and you're doing a pivot or your adjustments. The business
Mm-hmm.
canvas is what I use. But both of them are based on a lean approach and a lean mindset. Let's get you good questions, start do some homework, and then let's go and let the market teach us, as opposed to spending years or even many, many months doing all the homework, and the market is changing so quickly, you're almost
You're
guaranteed
gone.
to be on old data, even if you did have really, really strong data. Also, with AI, you can get data faster than ever. So if you're smart in how you use AI, it shouldn't take you as long to get strong data as it would have somebody 20 years ago.
It's definitely important. And I guess most listeners hearing this would or should know this by now. But if you're not learning how to train your AI to give you the information you need with the least errors possible, then your business is missing out. Just, it's very important, you know. So market research or day-to-day operations, all the things. So you've had hundreds of conversations with founders. What would you say sets sets them apart, the ones who keep going versus the people who don't keep going?
Hmm. It's a great question, Joe. A mentor of mine told me to fall in love with the problem and not the solution.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Fall in love with the problem and not the solution. So a lot of founders, they become very wrapped up in I built this thing, but they miss some steps along the way. It can be a tech platform, it can be a construction company, whatever they've built, they oftentimes don't have as deep if they are if a business owner isn't thriving, if they're not getting the traction that they want, then a lot of times I'll say, well, let's back up. And usually what happens is they don't understand the problem to the degree of nuance that would be helpful. So
Brilliant.
let's back
Yes.
up and see where is that disconnect. Doesn't mean you built something that is useless. It just means there's that disc that you can 20 years of doing this and interviewing people who built things that are just jaw dropping and how impactful and also just how awesome they are as business owners. Now I can have a sense if something is languishing, there's just not quite a full on connect with the community. Either they don't understand, they're trying to launch it in too wide angle a way, or they have identified a community avatar that has a particular problem, but they don't yet fully understand it. And if we can just go a little deeper in the pain point and the challenges that the community is dealing with, it's pretty easy, especially if we're talking about software or a service business. If it's a hard tech business, a deep tech business, that's a little more complicated. If you're a battery startup, okay, the change in a battery startup is more expensive. But the large majority of businesses that might be listening to this are not ones that are going to take $1 billion to get to profitability, right? I do
Probably
talk to
not.
them. When we talked earlier, Joe, I asked you who listens. So we're probably
Yes.
talking about somebody who can move a little leaner, and we're not talking about billions or even millions and millions lost every time you pivot. So
True.
if you're not quite getting the traction, then let's go a little deeper there, understand that problem, and don't keep adding features when it's not yet getting traction.
So falling in love with the problem, not the solution, would also keep you grounded in articulating the mission of the business.
Yeah.
It would keep you grounded in every customer interaction or potential customer interaction with the way that you communicate to your staff what the next steps are, whether you need that feature or not.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a very central pillar. That's a really good way to put it. Fall in love with the problem, not the solution.
It invites a servant leader, a servant business owner attitude,
Mm,
right? Like I'll give you my example. Why am I so passionate about social entrepreneurship, right? 20 years of my life, complete pivot in my career, a lot of lean years at the beginning to get started, a lot of stress, and a lot of work. Why did I do all that? Right. And for me, I look around the world, and the world, there's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of inequality. We're not living very sustainably on this one beautiful planet that we've all been born here to. And I think spiritually, it's our job to help take care of this place. I don't think we're doing a very good job of our job. And I can't do it all. I'm one person, right?
mm-hmm.
And personally, I think social entrepreneurship is the biggest lever. It's the most powerful tool for change that we have because we don't need permission from a government or from a nonprofit. Like, obviously, don't do anything illegal, but I'm not begging for nonprofits to give me money. I'm servicing my clients. And if I do a good job of servicing my clients, the world gets better because of who they are, what they do. So I very consciously chose the problems that people who are using business to make the world a better place as the problem, because there's some unique sets of problems that social entrepreneurs have that other business owners might or might not have. It seems like the research, as it's newer research, but it looks like social entrepreneurs do have some different problems. And the
Could
reason
you
I'm excited,
articulate on that? We'll come
I
back to
will
that.
totally do.
Yes.
The reason I'm excited about it is because if I can help social entrepreneurs solve their problems and help more people, it's the most powerful tool of change I've ever heard about on planet Earth, right?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
why I'm passionate about that. I have what Simon Sinek says, start with why. That's my why. If I can help
Yes.
this group of people get way better at helping more people and earn more money, then the world gets better faster. And that helps me sleep better. All right, I don't know where we're going as a human species on this planet, but at least the people that I have spent my working hours working with are trying to do something about some of the sticky problems on planet Earth.
That's the maxim I've used as a marketer. Obviously, marketers get tarred with the brush of ruining everything. And for me, I think it's the William Morris quote that everything in your space must be useful or beautiful or both in terms of designing. And that's the thing that always sticks in my mind with the products that I put my time into promoting or the services is that they must be useful or beautiful or both. And I guess it's my way of, if you call it, it's not social impact in that I'm not digging wells, but yeah, it's just my way of, as a marketer, of feeling like what I do is helpful rather than just bleeding people for everything that we can. It's a terrible
I
way to
love that,
live.
Joe. Like, so you have a value um, component of your
Yes.
decision making process of what you're doing. And I think for each of us to run that filter through, again, it's our businesses. What are we
Mm,
doing having our own businesses if we don't welcome our own values into that business? And the research actually tells us that done well, values-based businesses make more money and there's more quality of life for people who work in them. And I want that. I hope that for your
yes.
listeners, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's part of my drive for this podcast is to help people build businesses that play to their unique strengths and suit
Yeah,
them, not the scientific cookie cutter pretend approach.
exactly.
And so that is so beautiful. Tell me then about the challenges specific to social entrepreneurship that you've seen in the research and in your experience with the people you work with.
Yeah. So it's very new research because social entrepreneurship hasn't been that well studied. So this is small, total study size. So I don't want to overblow the what I'm
Mm,
quoting.
mm,
But for instance, there was a study in the Detroit, Michigan area, and they looked at a number of accelerators. In other words, places where businesses are sent to, once you're up and running at least a little bit, how you can, in a concentrated way, learn a lot about business and scale. And I used to be the business coach here in Albuquerque for a small business administration, SBA accelerator called SBA Thrive, um, one of the most impactful programs of the SBA, and many other accelerators are. There's a lot of research about accelerators work, right? And I had the process, the absolute just privilege of being a business coach in accelerators, and I still talk to some of the people whose businesses have um, their lives have been changed because of
mm.
accelerators. If you take an impact focused business, if you take a social entrepreneur and you drop them into an accelerator, I think it was an N of 12. So again, very small, but the initial research is normally you put a business into an accelerator and you expect the chances of them earning more money and just even surviving go up. You put a social entrepreneur in some of the initial research into a regular accelerator, they fail more often and they make less money.
Mm. Why would you think that
Very
that is the
interesting,
case?
right?
Yes.
The some of the original thinking, like, wow, we didn't expect that. The again, very small study, but that's that matches a lot of the on the ground narratives that in social entrepreneur communities we're hearing is because most business resources don't understand what we would call a double bottom line or triple bottom line businesses, right? Most businesses are about optimizing for one metric, profit. How do you make a business make more money? And that's what accelerators, that's what business schools, like almost every resource that's commonly available to businesses is thinking about that one metric, right? Profit. But a social entrepreneur, by definition, has more than one metric, right? They might have a social metric, right? So the three P's: people, profit, and planet. Those are that's one simple way to think about social entrepreneurship. A more advanced way for anybody who's interested is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There's 17 areas that are commonly thought of as where social entrepreneurs typically tend to land in. But let's just stay with the simple one. The three, people and profit, or people, profit, and planet. To have a successful social enterprise, not just greenwashing, you're usually dealing with sticky problems. So let's say I'm thinking of a interview I did fairly recently with the founder of a social enterprise called the Awake Window Company in Phoenix, Arizona. Their mission is to help people coming out of prison get good paying jobs. But they do it through selling windows and doors, high-end windows and doors in luxury homes and in some commercial applications, high-end construction, right? And they have to be cognizant that it's not just about making more money all the time, but the sticky problem is if you look at the outcomes, especially in the United States, of somebody who goes to prison ever in their life, their outcomes are not good. They tend to get into the revolving door of the justice system. And it's very hard to extract yourself from that system once, even if it's a small, relatively short sentence of 6 months.
Mm, mm,
It goes on your records. If it's a felony, whole classes of jobs you're now not eligible for: police officer, school bus driver. It just goes on and on. Financial advisor, accountant. It takes you out of a very significant proportion of living wage jobs, and they wanted to do something about that. But their company has a more complicated dance because they're doing a good thing in the world, but remember, they're selling to people who, by definition, who owns a luxury home. It's people who have more money. So you have this, you have to be skillful of how you navigate this particular scenario. And most business schools, most accelerators don't have experience with that more complex marketing. What are some of the legal issues? How do you build trust? You usually have to go slow to go fast when you have a social impact
mm,
component of a business. It takes more time to build trust, and the timelines that you might and the action steps that a social entrepreneur might run into in a typical accelerator are maybe not a good fit, but they're in an accelerator and this is what everybody's doing. And there's somebody standing at the front of the room saying, this is how you do it. This is how you grow a business. We've researched it. We've talked to hundreds of business owners. Thousands of people have been through this curriculum. And if you're on the newer end of the spectrum, you might not know that it isn't a good fit for your kind of business. So
exactly. You think you have to trust it, but slapping a reviews widget on your website in that situation won't cut it to build trust. Yes.
Exactly. You have to slow down and understand in that native community that my client's building the Adobe restoration and construction business, or in the Awake Door scenario where they're dealing with people from communities where there's a much higher than average of their population going to prison. You got to slow down and make sure that the community trusts you, both sides, the wealthy part of the community and people who don't have access to good jobs. It's going to take longer, and you're going to have to do more emotional labor than a business owner who doesn't have that aspect of their business model.
Mm, mm. So the ones that keep going, if we circle back to that question, versus the ones who don't, we've got some significant challenges that we've touched on, at least one of them now, of social entrepreneurship. What would you say distinguishes the business owners who are able to keep going through those sorts of challenges where there is no playbook? You know, this is how you build trust with high-end homeowners when you have people who have been to jail installing your windows. You know, there's no playbook for that, and they've got to figure it out. So in an environment where those sorts of challenges come up that aren't in the standard training of an accelerator, as you say, how do people keep going? How do they find their way through that?
The ones that I see do it most successfully, and this was my origin story as a social entrepreneur, you find a community, right? That's
Mm,
literally why I launched the podcast. You don't have to take my word for it. Go listen to the episode. I mean, and by the
yes,
way, they're doing awesome. $100 million
yes,
a year. They have 100 employees, right? That
fantastic.
there we have examples now of impact clean tech businesses that are doing fabulously as businesses and actually now have a competitive advantage. Imagine Phoenix, Arizona decides it trusts the Awaken window and door company, and they do a fabulous job of their products, which is the reputation. You don't take my word for it. Go look on Google. And
Mm,
there's an impact part of the brand that has become something that in that community, there is value to the community to do business with. They are doing better than their competitors, not worse from a profit perspective, because they've done the work to build the brand, to build the trust. Now they have a competitive advantage over somebody who doesn't have an impact mission, right?
mm.
So we
So
know how
going
to do
slow to
that
go
now.
fast and sticking, excuse me,
Yep.
sticking it out.
We kn- yeah, we know how to do that now, and we have people like Justin and his team who are very generous with their time and are willing to share their story. And when they can, mentor. We have conferences, we have podcasts, we have blogs, we have newsletters where people, LinkedIn groups, where we're sharing these kinds of strategies and from the real world timeline strategies that do have that triple bottom line or double bottom line social and profit outcomes that 20 years ago were much rarer. So we're building sort of a collective body of knowledge of how to do this. And it still how long has business education been a thing in the world, and how long has social entrepreneur education been a thing? We're 150 years behind. We're catching up. There's much better information, but it's still in maybe 20 years of any sort of dedicated community research and sharing of information, as opposed to hundreds in a more traditional path in business.
The deep impact that you're making, though, with showing people what the success can look like in that business model. Reminded of an experiment in a school where they put female scientists posters on the walls and the girls started doing better in maths and science. I don't remember the details, but just when we
Yeah.
can see what success looks like, it somehow something clicks in our brain and it's so much easier to pursue it. So the work that you're doing with the Awarepreneurs groups, a podcast, and your tribe, I guess, is incredibly valuable in holding those things up so that people can see them and be inspired to, take a shot at what they think they need to do to make the world a better place as well. If
It's very
somebody,
meaningful work. Yeah.
yeah, it is. If somebody felt sort of capable, but they're tired, they're not burnt out, they're just worn down, where should they look first? I have a feeling I know the answer to this one.
No. It can be helpful to go back to that fit. A lot of times when you're tired, it means you're trying to muscle something
Hmm.
that if you had a better fit with the communities you're trying to serve and they understood what you were trying to do better, it would take less muscle. So
That is
that
a
would be
very good
one
point.
place. Yeah,
Hmm.
that'd be one place to look. And the other place is find community. It's really hard work to do alone. If you can either locally find a community of other folks who think about entrepreneurship as a path to change, or if it's not in your backyard, then that's why there's online communities, the podcasts, newsletters, the LinkedIn groups,
Mm.
that's an opportunity that as long as you have access to the internet, there is much better, like quantum leap better information than what was available 20 years. It was so much better.
Yeah, it's true. Very, very wealthy when it comes to information and resources. And
Yeah.
yeah, so not just, the standard YouTube university, but actually connecting with people who have walked the path before us and seeing how they've navigated things it's wonderful to have that opportunity. The work you're doing there, again, I just can't overstate how valuable that is. If if you're thinking about what a successful business looks like, and not publicly in terms of the social impact, but privately, how would you articulate that?
That's a good question, Joe. I think one is that the internal experience of working at that company for the people who spend time with that organization or company is consistent with the external story that's been told.
Yes.
That would be a very big indicator. And the other is the quality of life of what it feels like. The older I get, there's the numbers, and I like. We just did an impact report for. We have an impact focused hackathon. We did a climate focused hackathon for a new venture of mine called NM Tech Talks, New Mexico Tech Talks, and we did a climate focused hackathon. It was super fun to see the impact report, and here's how many people came, and here's how many. We got 11 working products out in the world in 30 hours, and this many mentors, and this many community people, and this many impressions on social media. That's all fun, and it's exciting. And what really drives me is what our hackers said. We didn't pay them. We had 37 people give an entire weekend of their lives and come together and build something impactful in a community. And what they said about what it was like to be part of this experience was, um, it was remarkable, Joe. Like they stop us on the street. They're still posting on social media like a month later. They're signed up 6 months in advance for the next one. They're telling their friends. They're going to their professor saying, we need to tell everybody at our college or our university about this. Like the experience of what it actually means to the people that you're intending to help, their narrative, not our narrative as the founders or the marketers of it. What's the narrative that when they're given free rein and they feel safe enough to tell us what it was really like to have this experience? What do they say?
It's so wonderful to hear and refreshing. I'm getting a theme across the interviews that I've done so far. On one hand, we're hearing, AI is going to take all of our jobs and people will struggle to find meaning and it'll happen very soon. And on the other hand, I'm seeing people getting out and building things instead of talking about it and hand wringing. And you've got all of these tech people just coming into your hackathon and bringing products out in the space of that hackathon time, getting, shipping, getting it done.
Yep.
It's very refreshing to hear. I love that. I think they need to keep that up. It's great.
Our tagline for NM Tech Talks is igniting opportunities through live events and community. And
Hmm.
I think if I was somebody who's thinking a lot about AI, and I am, I use it. This hackathon couldn't happen. We couldn't ship products at the end of 30 hours without AI. AI,
No.
very, like, you can't win. This is not a mock up. You have to have, as part of demo day, Saturday morning at 9 we start, and Sunday at 3 p.m. computers down, and it's time to show the judges and the community what you built. And if it doesn't work, we understand, but you can't win. You
Mm.
can't just draw mock-ups of what You think the product, you have to show us a working prototype at the end of 30 hours. There's no way
Yes,
we could do that without AI, or at least not the
absolutely.
quality that we saw, right? But
Yes.
this was not everybody sitting in their home, in their bedroom or their living room making a thing. The fact that we came together and we had a dozen mentors, from Sandia National Labs, one of the best laboratories in the world in terms of the PhDs and the research that's happening there, and somebody who leads a whole climate section, a whole weather section. He has 36 employees. He was one of our mentors. He was like, I'm having coffee with him soon. He was so excited. He's like, when can we do this again? Right. Um, it was the talent in the room combined with the mentors and the magic that happened there. Yes, AI was in the room and the humans were very passionately represented, and that was the magic. And I feel like I don't know all the details of where AI is going. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. But I do feel like future proofing involves making sure you're creating experiences and opportunities for the humans to do something meaningful together. And that's why it's an impact hackathon. It's not just making cool things, it's about making things that are around the sticky problems that New Mexico is facing. The last one was about climate and severe weather. Our next one is going to be about food and agriculture. It's getting harder to grow food with more extreme things that are happening with heat and drought and fire that's making it harder to grow food. So we're going to bring together a similar community and think about how we use software and AI to be smarter about how we grow food. These are real world problems, and we're bringing people together to help solve them. And the solutions are amazing. But even more than the solutions are what the people who are attending are telling us about what it's like to be in that room and the kinds of opportunities that's opening for them.
What a time to be alive. I love it. If What question would you want every founder, business owner to sit with in the coming year, especially if they're deciding whether to keep building their business or not?
It's a great question, Joe. Obviously, it probably won't surprise you. I'm going to ask you, why are you doing this? Right?
Yes.
It's your business. If you're not passionate about it, why should anybody else be? Just to
There's a nutshell
have,
right there.
yeah, just to have new cool features, shiny object. All right, cool. But with AI, anybody, even if you don't know coding, can build a thing. There's
Hmm.
that sense of falling in love with the problem, and I think the stickier the problem, the harder the problem, the more likely it is to have that sense of just, I can't wait to get up out of bed and to make another step in this. Doesn't matter. Is it a software? Is it a service? Is it hardtack? Whatever you're building, when you fall in love with the problem, you're less likely to hit that burnout space. I'm not saying it's not going to get harder. You're not going to be like, this is really hard. Believe me, in 20 years,
Yes.
especially being super early in the social entrepreneur world, it was really, really hard. But when you hit that hard moment, or you hit that moment of, I don't know if I should keep going, if the problem is sticky enough and you're clear on who's suffering from that problem, then when you hit that moment, you're going to be way more resilient than the person who's building some cool new, shiny object SaaS product, right?
I think so. I think so. For anybody listening, please soak in what Paul just said. If you're wondering whether to keep going, it may be that you haven't fallen in love with the problem enough or defined it clearly enough to know what it is you're doing. So yeah, sit with that, think it through. And I think it's that mission driven mindset that helps you overcome all sorts of challenges for the long term, which is fantastic. Thank you, Paul. I've really appreciated speaking with you today.
Thanks for having me, Joe, and I hope you keep going with this. You're good at it, and I
Uh,
like the energy you're bringing to your show.
Thank you. That's very kind. We'll talk soon.